Hey guys, this is Ant bringing you a Unreal Engine tutorial. So in this video, I'm going to go over a few techniques that we can use to debug a project. So this project I've got here is a sample project for the FPS, but there's a lot of things wrong with it. If I hit play, wait for it to load, you notice that there's no gun. Straight in front of us, there's a weapon spawner that's broken, and there's a gun that says pick me up, but you can't pick it up. And there's a couple of crates that say shoot me to destroy, but we've got no gun. But however, if you walk over these crates, that destroys them as well. So without further ado, we'll look at some debugging techniques to help fix this. Okay, so we've got the first-person framework that's broken and we need to fix it. So what techniques do we have available to us to help to debug this? Well, there's three that I use. And the first one is print strings. The second is using breakpoints. And the third is using the output and message logs to help track down problems. But we'll go through the different problems and we'll show how a different combination of debugging techniques can help. So the first one I'm going to look at is the weapon spawner. So just to recap, it should be spawning a weapon by default, but for some reason this one isn't. If I hit escape, you'll notice that the message log appears, and it's actually saying that there's a null pointer or access none trying to read a property. If you click on the spawn pickup section in this message log, it actually tells you where the problem is. However, it doesn't really give you any detailed information about what the problem is. So for this one, I could use a print string, and that will tell me if it's firing or not. So if I hit play, you can see in the top left-hand corner that it just did fire the print string, but it's not really getting to what the problem is with this particular weapon spawner. Hit escape, go back into the event graph, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to press F9 and I'm going to put a breakpoint on this spawn pickup event here. Go into first person map, hit play, and as you can see the game pauses. So if I go on the first person map, everything is basically frozen on that particular frame. You can see here that the breakpoint is stopped on this particular node. If I hit F9, I can take the breakpoint off. However, I want to keep it on for a second because I want to diagnose what the problem is with this node. So inside of this section of code, event begin play is calling get all actors of class, beg your pardon. So it's getting all of the pickup spawners, it's getting an instance of one, and it's attempting to spawn this. However, there does seem to be a little bit of a problem with this, as it's attempting to get an index of 1. However, if I open up the array here for pickup spawners and start expanding the details, you'll see that the index is 0, and I'm trying to access an index of 1. So that's why the weapon isn't spawning. So let's just fix that then. So if I just hit stop to stay in the graph, we'll hit 0, change that, we'll hit play again, and I'll do the same thing as I did before. So there is one pickup spawner, but as you can see it's still 0, the index is 0, and if I hit F9 to remove this and go to resume play and edit a session, you'll notice now that the weapon spawns in and you can pick it up. So just to recap what I did there, I put a print string in to try and diagnose if this code was firing. It was, but it wasn't really telling me what was the problem with this particular weapon spawner. So what I did then, well, I knew that the code was firing via the print string, but in order to access more detailed information, I hit F9. I hit F9, hit play, and I basically checked to see what index this get node was receiving, which was set to 0. It's set to 1, not 0, beg your pardon. So I went in, I checked the array, confirmed that there was actually something inside of the array, and it was at index 0, and that's our weapon spawner. So, resume play, and we can now pick up the weapon. So, let's move on to another problem, and let's see if we can use some of our debugging techniques to solve more issues with this broken framework. Now that we've fixed the weapon spawner, we can look at the gun. So, I picked up the gun. I'm pressing, usually it's left click for the trigger to fire, but it's not firing anything. So we need to diagnose what's going on with this then. So let's check the project settings, because sometimes there can be people that will set the wrong thing in input action mapping. So we'll rule out human error. Let's have a look to see what the primary action is. Okay then, so we can see here that the actual primary action which fires the gun is mouse wheel down. So I don't want it to be mouse wheel down. I want to set that to be at least left mouse button. We'll quickly save that. And what we'll do is we'll test the gun to see if it fires. So we'll pick the gun up. I'm pressing left mouse button, but the gun still isn't firing. Okay, so it needs a bit more work to get this firing then. So let's have a look to see what's going on. So the player has the BP rifle inside of the outliner, but it's equipped, but it's not firing. So let's do a bit of diagnosis on the gun. First port of call is to go into BP rifle. Okay. So we could tell that this is firing, but there's a little bit of code in here. When it overlaps, it casts to the first person character, gets the reference, and then what we can see is it basically attaches to the grip point. We know that's happening, and it's binding to the event that helps to fire it. Let's have a look at the code, shall we? So inside of the code, there's a set node here that's basically a rifle reference. So we'll go into the first person character. Let's find out what that is. And straight at opening the graph, you can see here primary action input, input action primary action. If this is valid, this rifle reference is valid, cool on use item. So what I think the problem is that this is being set to null when it should be setting something inside of the main first person character. But we'll use a breakpoint to debug this as well. So put a breakpoint on that reference, we'll pick the gun up, and as you can see here, we have a valid first person reference, but the rifle reference is null. So if I just press F9 to remove that breakpoint and resume, you'll see here that we have the same problem. The gun doesn't fire, although it's gone a bit laggy. Okay, let's go into the BP rifle. And let's pass a reference of self to this, as we're passing in a BP rifle reference, so we might as well just pass it the one that's been picked up. Go back in, pick the gun up, press play, albeit it's a bit loud, but as you can see, the gun is now firing. So, to recap what I did there, sometimes project settings can be wrong. I went into the project settings folder via edit, project settings. I went under engine and input, and I corrected what the actual button should be to fire. Now usually it's left mouse button. Confirmed that that was working and set to the right button. Went inside the actual rifle itself and confirmed that there was actually a missing reference here. That's been confirmed, set inside of the main character, so this gun will only fire if there's got a valid gun in the hand, basically. So, as you can see there, we were looking in different places, but can you see how the importance of just checking and looking in the code just to make sure that something is being set is important? Also, looking at project settings, just because someone says there's a left mouse button to fire something doesn't necessarily mean that that's the case. So it's worth always checking your projects, go into the project settings and having a look to see what's actually been set. Okay, so the last one that I'm going to show you is the shoot me to destroy crates that are in the scene. So let's try and find out what's going on with these. Let's hit play. Let's grab a gun. Okay, so I'm firing and it's not doing anything. It's not just, it's obviously hitting it, but it's not destroying it, which is what it should be doing. So let's have a look at the destructo cube actor. Okay, so looking in here, can you spot what's wrong? Well, we know that the event is firing, or is it? Let's go in and let's hit breakpoint. Let's pick up a gun and let's shoot it. No, it isn't. The collision is not responding to that. So even though it says that it shoot me to destroy, something's wrong with the collision settings. So let's have a look, see what we can find out. Gone into the destructo cube, and I'm going to have a look at the settings here. So first of all, there is a block wall dynamic on there, but is the collision actually working? Let's go to overlap all dynamic. So it is set to overlap. So let's have a look at the actual collision mechanics then. Is it because it's hitting one collision and not the other? So we'll go into the box extents. Let's just increase the size of that. We'll hit compile and we'll save and we'll hit play. Let's see what happens now. So grab the gun. No, it's still not responding. Okay. Let's check the projectile. So if we go into the collision components. Oh, okay. So checking the collision component for this projectile, it looks like it's all set to block, but there's no overlap events. So let's just go to overlap all, just for now. In fact, let's do overlap all dynamic. I don't want the character to be able to particularly step onto this, so let's see if that fixes it. So quickly grab the gun. There we go. So that's what was happening basically. The projectile had the wrong collision settings, so it wasn't able to basically overlap. If we hit resume, the projectile is destroyed, but that's fine. I don't mind that. So, okay, so we know that the projectile is hitting the cube. Let's find out what's going on with this particular event. So we know that it's firing now, but for some reason, this cast has been set to basically cast a first-person BP character. So it's the wrong cast. Ideally, we should be casting to the projectile, which is BP first-person projectile. So we'll just quickly change that. What we can do is if you hold Control, you can just drag the pins in. Same with this one. And that's fine, I've already done it there. And hit Q to straighten them up if you want to. So let's give that a try, see what happens. Okay, quickly run in, grab the gun, shoot me to destroy. And as you can see, I'm now shooting those crates and they're being destroyed. So that's working as intended. So, just to recap on that final debugging step, all I've done is I've obviously gone in to the cube. I've checked the collision for this, which is set to overlap all dynamic. The static mesh is set to block all, but that's fine, I don't mind that. The collision event wasn't firing at all, so I'm thinking, okay then, let's go back up the chain, let's go to the object that's actually colliding with it. Gone to BP first person projectile, looked at the collision component, and the collision component was set to, I believe it was a custom collision, which couldn't really pick up any overlaps. So all I've done is I've just changed it to can character step on to no, and I've changed the collision preset to overlap all dynamic. Got the collision firing by shooting it, but then on reflection, going inside of the actual cube itself, it was casting to the wrong thing, which could cause a problem because obviously if the player can walk over and destroy it, that's not working as intended. In this case, it was the wrong cast being made. So, as a matter of principle, if you have a debugging code, also take a good look about what's actually being cast to as well, and make sure that every sort of collision object you have is set to the right setting. You have to basically backtrace it, and it can, depending on how long the problem is. Luckily it was only 2 in this case, but it's just a case of just following the code, looking at the event, and then seeing why it isn't working. Okay, that brings us to the end of the video. Just to recap before I go, let's go through some of the techniques. So I've used print strings to test if something's firing, which it does. I've used breakpoints to determine what the values are, and I've used the message log to take me to the blueprint where there's been an issue. But there's one other thing that I haven't covered, and that's the output log. The output log is usually in the bottom left, but if you can't see it, if you go to Window, Log, and Output Log, you can see that this is already selected, but you can toggle it on and off again. The output log shows you detailed information about what's going on inside the blueprints. If a print string is firing, you'll see it in here. If something's set to null pointer or none, you'll also see the error inside here as well. So keep that in mind when you're trying to debug anything. Just have a look in the output log, see if there's anything broken or if there's anything set to null or not being set properly. Usually if it's not being set, it'll be in here, and it'll tell you exactly where to find it. Thank you for watching the video. In the description below there'll be a link to download this project, so you can have a go about, see if you can fix any of the things that I've gone over. Also, there's other things wrong with the project as well. You can have a look round to see what's going on and see if you can fix them without me having to tell you. I'll see you later guys, take care.